Oh hi, this is Senis. This is my retrospective of the Acid Flask Falconer slash Bladedancer build that I got from H2O and Dread's video. This is not my build, this is not me claiming the build or in any way. I'm just gonna provide my commentary on how it feels to play, how what do you build, how do you level the build, and stuff like that. Both builds are incredible damagers. You have way too much damage, honestly, just for the content that's available right now on both of them. And they are. Bladedancer is a little bit more tanky on the tanky side, and the Falconer has a little bit more damage. But both builds I've played. I only played these two builds and nothing else, so they are uh, cycle start viable. I've never played another build this cycle. You can. I have done over 800 corruption on both of them, and I think I can do even more. I just haven't gotten around to it. Uh, I decided to call it because there's going to be a new PoE league coming out, so that's why I decided to call it. I think the build is capable of 1000 plus corruption, but there's not much reason to push that much corruption anymore, at this point anyways. The main differences between the two builds is the lack of Elico's Abandon, something that can allow you to use your Acid Flask by yourself, like the Falconer has the Falcon throwing Acid Flasks, which allows you to proc Elico's Abandon and proc mana regen on potion use abilities. So on the Bladedancer, you're gonna go more into mana regen as a stat and mana itself as a stat. And on the Acid Flask Falconer, you can go more into damage instead of mana. From 1.0, if you have played this build in 1.0, I have myself, is that the main change for the build is the we lost we got -3 mana cost on, or +3 should I say, mana cost on explosive traps from the Trappa's node. So our explosive trap costs more mana, so we have to invest more into mana in general. And the other small change is Acid Flask now only requires 3 points in the one that reduces its mana going to Explosive Flask. I'm sorry, I'm kind of blanking a little bit. So the key item requirements for the builds is very simple. You just want your -5 mana cost tier 7 rings. As you can see, I can do tier 4 Julra very easily on both builds. This is the one you're seeing right now is the Falconer. The damage is ridiculous as you can see on tier 4 Julra. You need your Traitor's Tongue, the new item that came out with 1.1 patch, is way too good for this build. It gives you 12 to 13% crit chance, base crit chance on a dagger, which is unbelievable. It's on the base that gives you crit multi as well, and it gives +2 to your dexterity skills, and I'll get into that later, why we need that much uh, why we need that much skill points in Acid Flask. As you can see, this is, I think, 700 corruption Shade of Oribus. I mean, I am getting hit sometimes, but we do have Silver Shroud on both of the builds. Honestly, the Bladedancer has better access to Silver Shroud, but the Falconer still has it. And it's another Aberoth kill, this one on the Bladedancer. I played the Bladedancer on COF, and I played the Falconer on Merchant's Guild. I played the Falconer Merchant's Guild because I like playing trade, and then I went out of trade to go play Bladedancer on COF because of the gold dupes that happened. And I think they're both viable completely. It's just in COF you have worse gear in general, it takes longer to get your gear. I personally prefer playing the Bladedancer version. I like the fact that you have access to more defensive tools. I like the fact that Smoke Bomb is just that broken. It's an immunity that also gives you a Silver Shroud that lets you dodge everything and it cleanses ailments. It's so nice. And it's a massive traversal skill. I don't know what else you could want from one skill to do. And it also gives you throwing leech and throwing damage. It's actually ridiculous how strong it is. Also, it spawns shadows, which throw explosive traps for you. Did I mention that? It's just ridiculous how strong of an ability it is. Uh, my preference, again, is the Bladedancer, but I think the Falconer is totally viable. I think the Falconer is totally good. You can build more. I built more health on the Falconer. If you saw the first clip, I had about 3.4k health, which is not a little amount, especially when you're crit avoidance capped and LE res capped and all res capped, honestly. For leveling, I have used, until level 20, I used the puncture build for rogues, where you get a bow and then you puncture and flurry and you kill everything in your path. It's super easy. I think it's the best leveling for rogues in general, the bleed version. Even if you're a Bladedancer, it's really good. Uh, you can see I'm doing 822 corruption echoes right now very easily. The build has wide screen clear, so you don't have to worry about stuff hitting you outside the screen because you'll be the one doing that to them. And the damage is ridiculous again. As you can see, those white tigers that go out of that rush at you and throw frostbite at you, you can just kill them instantly. It's not a big deal. You'll still die to them sometimes if you are not careful. That this is, I am a bad player. I died a lot on this build, but I think if you want to play this hardcore, I don't know if I would suggest it. I never played hardcore. I don't think I can suggest it to anyone. But the build is insane for softcore. As you can see, the screen-wide clears are so great. I don't even have all my skill points. I was missing some. And for leveling, if we get back to the leveling topic, at the level 20 mark, you will be able to get your explosive trap from the Falconer tree. Even if you're a Bladedancer, I would suggest you go for the explosive trap first. So at level 20, you will get your explosive trap, and you will still have your puncture spec'd into. Keep your puncture, and then you just put a explosive trap and acid flask into your other two skills at level 20 when you have three skill specializations, and then you can start swapping to it once you get the notes that your explosive trap throws acid flasks. I'll show that a little bit later. But early on you're gonna have a lot of mana issues, right? So you want to be keeping an eye out for the minus mana cost rings. Even if they're tier 1, they still provide -3 mana cost to your rings, to your throwing attacks on your rings. So those are massive for you even while leveling. You want those as fast as possible. As you can see, I'm doing a poison Oribus, which is the worst of the worst, honestly. Just does way too much damage with its poison. This is around 750 corruption. And leveling wise, you want to get mana regen and mana on your gear because your damage is great in general, but you will run out of mana on bosses and stuff. So if as much mana as you can get is good damage for you. Other than that, just the usual fire damage and throwing damage is good as well, and critical strike multiplier. So for affixes, because we have the Acid Flask node that gives us 200% crit multi and 200% crit chance, we want to invest so much into crit chance and crit multi. Now, crit chance isn't as important anymore because of the Trader's Tongue dagger that we get. We get like 13% base crit chance on the offhand. That allows us to go more into crit multiplier, fire damage, fire penetration, mana and mana regen. These kinds of stats just increase our damage way more. The fact that this new dagger came out is a huge buff to this build, even though the mana cost got nerfed with the Trappa's nerf from the explosive trap. It's still great. Uh, you can see I'm doing, what corruption is this? I don't even remember. But uh, with Harbinger, the boss is too easy. Uh, we need a lot of +2 Acid Flask levels, especially if you're going for the high-end version of the build, because we are using Knowledge of Immunity. I'll get into that in a bit. Uh, Actually, let me just jump into that. We're using this node. We're getting these 4 points, which do nothing for us. It gives us poison chance, which is useless because we are using explosive flask, poison duration, which is also useless. But this is acid flask penetrates poison resistance based on your own uncapped poison resistance. This changes into fire pen and scales with your fire resistance instead of poison resistance if you have explosive flask active. This was brought to my attention by a random redditor. Thank you very much for that. This just gives us way more damage. As you can see, I'm sitting at 228% fi fire resistance, and if you think about that, that's about uh, 15 times 5, 15 times 3, that's like 45% fire penetration. That is a ridiculous amount of fire penetration. As you can see, you can only get like 9% from a dagger, right, with a tier 5 roll. So fire resistance is great for the build because of this. So +2 acid flask levels, which will also give you more armor shred chance, which will increase your damage slightly, but still, because armor shred has diminishing returns on it, you can get more damage, like straight up 3% more damage with acid flask levels. And because of that, I swapped to Nihilus. This is the one I dropped from Aberoth. This wasn't, bought from the Merchant's Guild or anything. I just dropped it and got a lucky slam with the crit multi. We're using +2 dexterities on Trader's Tongues and +2 Eliko's Abandon. So that's a total of +7 skills to Acid Flask. Now, instead of double Trader's Tongue, I could be using a tier 7 Acid Flask on my Elikos, and that would give me the points that I need, and that's what I'm doing on the Bladedancer. I will show you in a bit. Uh, Actually, let me just get over to the Bladedancer and show you guys how that one's gear looks like. Um, there is another person called Juice, I think, is his YouTube channel. I'll leave a link down to his channel in the description. And he's pushing about 1,200 the last I saw his video, and he's doing a different Falconer build with still Acid Flask Explosive Trap, but he's using a shield and some more defensive stuff, and he's pushing very high corruption. So I learned some things from his build. The fact that, for example, the Adaptive Fuse, this one gives your explosive traps hits deal more damage to moving enemies. It's a 15% more damage multiplier. While you would think that this wouldn't work on Acid Flask, it apparently does. So that's nice. And as you can see, I have 26 points on the Falconer because I'm only using +2 to Acid Flask just because this one had more HP. That's what I found on my COF adventures. I have some planners left, like the endgame planners and the aspirational planners. I can run over them a little bit. Uh, this is the Bladedancer, the one I have. As you can see, the resistances look bad, but that's because the rolls are bad on that one. The the resistances, the rolls, it assumes like a middle ground, I think, on planner. So it shows my uh, Nihilus only gives me 5% cold res, which it does way more than that, right? It gives 12%, for example. And uh, the crit chance looks a little bit low as well, but I can assure you our Acid Flask has almost 100% crit chance. I'm using a Laraka's Claws, which has, thankfully, I did not even know this when this happened, was I put a tier 7 throwing attack speed, and I was hoping to hit a tier 5 throwing damage on it, but I hit the fire res, and I didn't know at the time, but fire res is great for this build now. So that's great. Laraka's gives throwing crit multi, mine is very low rolled, it's 67%, but if you can get your hands on good Laraka's, I think you should try your luck with it. You can lose out on some health and stuff and get too much damage with it. As you can see, we're using the double uh, tier 7 minus mana cost to throwing skills. I took H2O's advice on this and I got one and instantly Rune of Creationed it. That's why both of them are tagged as Circle of Fortune. I only got one in my whole time playing Circle of Fortune anyway, so that was a good idea. Uh, the rest of my gear I just found, I'm just using whatever I found. As you can see, I have a lot of tier 7 health and stun avoidance. That's because that's what I had, right? My daggers are okay. It's a tier 6 mana regen roll on a +2 dexterity trader's tongue. I don't want to waste too much time talking about my gear, how I have it. For blessings, we want to go into uh, anything. So first things first is you want the throwing damage leached as health on your blessings. You need one piece of damage leached as health on hit on one of your pieces. This could come from the relic base. Where is it? If I can find it somewhere. Oh, there it is. The Stolen Tithe Relic base gives you damage leached as health on hit, which is amazing. We need the leech. We don't have any other form of regeneration, recovery on our health. We have a lot of mana recovery, but no health recovery. So leech is very important for us. Either you get this, or you get the helmet with the damage leached as health, pinnacle helm base, or you get the blessing from the Black Sun timeline with the bird, Raya bird, and it gives you throwing damage leached as health. I think this one is the best optimal version is because this Dragon Visage that gives you crit multi also gives you fire res, so it's double dipping for us. And other blessings, you just want to go for whatever you're missing. For me, I if I didn't have lightning res roll on my rings, I would have had lightning res on the Lagon timeline, but because I have that, I just went with ward per second, and the rest are just capping out my resistances. The only one that matters is this one, Spirits of Fire. You can get fire resistance from it, which gives you fire penetration, which is amazing. There is fire resistance shred on this one, but we don't need that because we are going into explosive trap hits shred enemy fire resistance, and the enemy shred fire resistance only stacks up to 10 times, so it doesn't stack up more than that. So there's no reason to go even further. Another thing that should be mentioned is the Kelthon Blasting Agent is a great item for this build. I don't use it on my Bladedancer because I'm COF and I just didn't drop a 3 LP plus version of it. I only dropped 2 LP. This gives us fire penetration. This reduces our decoy duration, cooldown recovery speed for decoy, which makes our decoy do a lot of damage. It gives us fire damage as a base, and uh, as you can see, mine has poison res, fire, void res, throwing damage, and crit multi tier 7. I found this one for 3.5 million gold before the dupes were well known. So yeah, the damage you get from this is great. It's really helpful, but it's not necessary for the build or anything. Just like Lyraka's Claws, it gives you damage. It's nice if you have it, but if you don't have it, it's fine. Eliko's Abandon, I think, is required for the Falconer version, but for the Bladedancer, you have no way of proccing it, so you shouldn't use it. Nihilus, a good rolled Nihilus is great, as you can see on my character. I have a +2 to all skills Nihilus with 3.9 seconds of Frenzy and a tier 7 health roll, 12% increased mana. It's great, right? But it's a high end game thing, so you don't need to worry about this. If you don't have this, you should look to get Oracle Amulet, which reduces the damage over time you take from enemies, and with crit multi and maybe throwing damage or stuff like that. You can see the crit chance on the builds is really high. Again, the planner doesn't actually take into account the max rolls that you got on your gear and stuff, but I can assure you it doesn't take into account the 200% extra crit chance we have on Acid Flask as well. This node right here, Piercing Debris. This doesn't count in the planner's calculation. One node I'll mention is this one. Right here is the Cluster Bomb. This increases the mana cost of Acid Flask, but if you have if you have two -5 mana cost rings, this will not increase your mana cost from 0. It will increase from 0 to 0, so it will not change at all. This one increases your DPS by a lot, but only when your Falcon throws it, right? This is only when the Acid Flask is thrown directly, so it doesn't work on the Bladedancer, but it's a decent damage boost on the Falconer. So for leveling, what you want to do is, like I said, at level 20, you will be going into Acid Flask and Explosive Trap. You will spec into both of them. And then first things first is you're going to take this just to get here, and you're going to put 3 points into this, reduce the mana cost of Acid Flask, and get Explosive Flask. And then you're going to get 1 point into this, and then all 4 points into this, and then finish off these with 3 points in here, and then 4 points here, and then 1 point here. And if you have points left over, you should put them here until you get +4 acid flask +4 acid flask chest or something like that that allows you to get into knowledge of immunity at the end game. For explosive trap, what you want to do is get here so you can get the trap sprinkler node with 30% trap drop chance, and then you get automated bombardment, which makes your explosive which boosts the 30% drop chance to 100% with the plus 70%, but it increases the cost a lot. And then you get the instrument of the alchemist, which makes your traps throw acid flasks, which is the bane, like bread and butter of the build, right? This is how the build actually functions. After this, I would highly suggest you path down here instead of taking these nodes. You path down here and take the 4 mana efficiency. You take one of the mana efficiency nodes and then go into subtle sabotage to reduce the mana cost of explosive trap even more. After which you want to get 1 point into fire res shred and then static mines, and then get the Trappas. Trappas only increases the mana cost of your explosive trap by 3, which is not too much, right? But when you get all 3 of these nodes, it basically triples your output because you will throw 3 traps instead of 1, and this is only at the cost of 3 mana. While if you compare that to this, the clustered explosives, you will throw 1 additional trap, but it will cost 8 more mana. So this is much better, especially early game. You want to get into these as soon as possible. After you're reaching like 18, 20 levels on your explosive trap and you have nothing else to do, you should get 2 points into this, and then 1 point into this to get Dusk Shrouds. Dusk Shrouds give us a good amount of defensives. Dusk Shrouds give us a good amount of defensive value. It gives us dodge chance and glancing blows. I did not mention this, but on the Bladedancer, we're taking the node to convert our dodge chance into glancing blow chance. And what this means is each Dusk Shroud, instead of giving you 5% glancing blow chance, it's gonna give you about 10%. So it's great. This node is nice if you're on the Falconer. It gives your Falcon some penetration, and this stacks up to a lot, right? Like you're gonna stack this up to 10, 15 times. The others are not that important. The other skills, what you go on them. I'll go over maybe the Falconry. Falconry, you want to get 4 points from this, which when you directly use Acid Flask, your Falcon has a chance to gain additional Acid Flask charges, and you get this to 100% chance. And what this means is that when you run out of mana, you will be using Acid Flasks, which cost 0 mana, which are going to restore you mana because of a passive in the Rogue tree. And when you do that, your Falcon is gonna throw acid flasks with you as you're throwing them, and it's gonna just do a lot of damage even while you're out of mana. This one is really good. Whenever the Falcon hits an enemy, it marks them, and your attack against the marked target deals 150% more damage. That is ridiculous, and we can get more move speed with the buff, and we can get more Falcon global damage against moving targets, Falcon damage per dex, and Culling Strike on our Falcon, so for bosses you just instantly kill them if they're lower than 16% health. And on the Bladedancer, the thing to mention is Smoke Bomb. So for Smoke Bomb, I would suggest that you go for this 2 points here first to make your smoke cloud last longer, 1 point here, and instantly get this, which is going to give you Leech when you stand inside your smoke bomb, which is going to help you with leveling when you're when you're able to leech damage that that's dealt to you. You don't have to use potions as your sole heal anymore. And then after that, you're gonna go into this, which is gonna turn your smoke bomb into a traversal skill. It's gonna reduce the cooldown. You're gonna be immune while moving. This then you get this one, which is gonna give you Silver Shroud, which lets you dodge the next attack, and then you're gonna cleanse the ailments with that. So as far as passives go, I did not change much in the way of passives. I think you should be looking into this one, for example, the Guile, which is going to give you poison resistance if you're not capped on poison resistance, if you're missing out on something. Uh, just drop some other resistance and get poison resistance from here. First 5 points is gonna go into this, so just so you can get the explosive trap, and then after that you're gonna go back into Bladedancer. There's a massive crit multi from the Bladedancer here, and in the Bladedancer tree we have a lot of mana regen nodes, right? The mana regen is great. There's a there's a node, this one, that gives you a Silver Shroud when you're lower than 70% health, and Silver Shroud lets you dodge the next hit, so it's a great defensive. And this node is your dodge chance gets converted to glancing blow chance. With this and the glancing blow node from Explosive Trap, you are able to run fully glancing blow capped, so you're gonna be taking 35% less damage from hits, but that's not that important in a game like Last Epoch where dots are mostly the reason you die in the game anyways. But it's still a decent enough defensive tool. Uh, on the Falconer, we don't go too much into any other tree. We just follow the Falconer tree. There's way too many good stuff in the Falconer tree. There's the crit multi, there's the this one that gives you Silver Shroud and ability use, but this one is a bit weird, right? The way it works is, let me show you on the Falconer, is the more points you put into it, the ability list changes. So if you want to use it with 1 point only, which I do, I only want to use it with 1 point only, you have to change your you have to rearrange your ability placement. So it's a bit annoying, but once you get used to it, it's nothing too bad. Here's the mana gain when you cast a skill that costs 0 mana is from. This is only useful when you have your Acid Flask go down to 0 mana, so until then don't get this. There's no point. There's this node that you can put points into just to make sure that your crit chance, that your crit capped is, it gives you a bunch of crit chance per dagger you have equipped. So this is like 1 point is 16% crit chance. It's an actual ridiculous amount. As you can see, I have my right click on the leftmost side of my tree because of this node. So that's about it. With the skills and the passives. This is the aspirational build of the, like, aspirational planner for the build. I will leave a link to this as well. Don't mind the fact that some of them are marked as COF because that's what I was using. You can see we have tier 7, tier 6 slammed nihilists on this build with, you know, tier 7 health, tier 7 crit chance per equipped dagger. This is not something that's likely to happen to anyone, right? This is not a build that you're going to be able to reach, but it's nice to have a sort of something that you want to be able to reach right? We have 300% almost crit chance, I mean fire resistance. That gives us so much more fire pen. Uh, I don't know if you can see fire penetration. I guess not. There's no fire penetration on the planner. Anyways, that's about it for me from this video. We can just watch the rest of the clips. This is the campaign Lagon fight I did on my Bladedancer. As you can see, we're running out of mana. Mana is a bit of an issue, but we can phase Lagon in half a second almost. I'm using Smoke Bomb to get stacks, which are gonna give me Leech, because we're lacking the Leech at the early game. As you can see, and then we go into the other phase of Lagon, and the damage is just insane, even in campaign. This is Majasa in the campaign. The damage again is just ridiculous, but mana is an issue, especially if you're like me and you started one character as MG and then another character as uh, COF, so you can't carry over gear from one to another, or you can't help out with the gear. Anyways, thank you for watching, guys. Thanks to the H2O and Dread for bringing the build to a lot of people's attentions. Uh, and see you guys later. Good night.